So now inclusion part 2. We'll begin with the persona interview. I will demonstrate this like I would in a workshop. This should be fun and light and have a good time with it. People should enjoy doing this, keep a sense of humor. So the interviewer says, introduce me to your persona. I would answer, I'm Dr. Super Competent. Interviewer, it's nice to meet you, Dr. Super Competent. Notice we're not using our name anymore, just a persona. Tell me what you're most proud of, Dr. Super Competent. Well, that's easy. I'm perfect. I mean, I'm so good I can solve any problem, do anything. It's wonderful. How do other people appear to you, Dr. Super Competent? Kind of stupid. That should get a pretty good laugh. This is really important. When you're in persona, if you're in caregiver, everyone looks like they need help. If you're in, Mr. Nice Guy, everyone looks like they need cheering up. It's a very powerful change in perception, which I maintain is the weakest human function, as I've said before. What's your leadership strength? Well, Dr. Super Competent, well, it's the fact that people like to follow me because I'm so smart I can do anything, and it's very natural if people want to follow me. What's your leadership weakness, Dr. Super Competent? Excuse me? I don't understand the question. Interviewer. Okay, let's move on. What are the benefits of this role at work? Well, I get to feel powerful. I get to feel good about myself. It's a great place to be. What are you most afraid of, Dr. Super Competent? Being wrong. Interviewer. Drop your persona and go back to your authentic self. Whew, God, I hate holding up that big heavy thing. That's really onerous. Can you see how this persona arose in childhood? Yes, I was raised in part by a grandfather who was a German high achiever and had gone from being a janitor at a large company to being the CEO. And early on, he taught me to get affection from him by being smart and intelligent. Anything else you realize about yourself? Yeah, I'm really glad I don't have to wear that thing very often. This is really hard work. Okay. How about speaking manners? It's interesting to avoid negatives, as in, I only have 15 minutes from you, rather, I have 15 minutes for you. You'll also find if you practice a little bit, you can almost completely remove but from your language. Someone told me once that when you have a sentence and I hear but, I forget everything that you said before that. This is kind of another little fun thing. Replace yes-no questions with a choice of yeses, any which would be work for you. So if I ask my wife where we're going to have lunch, what'll happen is I will suggest someplace, she'll say no. I'll suggest something else, no. Instead, I give her a choice of yeses. The things that I think I would like and are open, I'd say, would you rather have lunch at Five Spice or City Cafe today? And she can then respond differently. Or if I'm asking someone to let me use them as a referral, I would say, I'd like to use you as a referral. Can I quote you directly or can I just quote you anonymously? And so forth. Easy little rules of thumb make things go easier. Include others by sharing something personal, but make it appropriate to the depth of the relationship. And so how do I use this myself? I mentioned many times I spent the first 7 years working as a consultant. And the situation was that I was usually working for a vice president, and these big companies, vice presidents only last about 6 months, so they're changing all the time. So when a new vice president came, I knew the red storyline they're running because they later told me. And it was that consultants are people that we pay a lot of money to tell us what we already knew. So when I got a new client, I'd go in and say, I'd like to talk to you about the importance of working in your company as a consultant. I said, all my life since I was very young, I've had a job. In fact, I've worked as a co-op even as a student when I was in college. And I've gotten used to having an organizational life, a set of friends that I socialize with and talk about things that are important with and build relationships with and build mutually satisfying, trusting processes and methods to get things done. And your company has a very important role in my personal life. I'm very fond of people here. I consider many of you my closest friends. So just wanted to know this is about a whole lot more for me than just money being able to contribute to your company. Wow, can you see how that shifts the context? Another thing I think is really fun is to think about having office hours at your office. When I was at University of Colorado, one of the very few things that was required by law was that I have office hours. I had to post them a certain number of hours depending on how many classes I was teaching, post them on the door, and say, like, on Tuesday I'm here from 2:30 to 4:30, and on Thursday I'm here from 9 to 11. So whenever a student came, I'd drop whatever I was doing, I'd give them my full attention and focus on their needs. So I think this is better than the so-called open door policy where people can come in and interrupt you at any time. Decide what boundary you want around this. It's great fun for me to go back to companies and see people with office hour indicators on the doors of the top managers. How about this? Many a man would rather you heard his story than granted his request. I came to this understanding when I was running the astrophysics division. What I noticed was there were people, a few, that would fight whatever decision I made when it went against them, even though I couldn't see any rational way to decide differently. I had to move money from one place to the other quite often. And so what I practiced doing when I was going to make a decision against someone, I'd invite them in my office before I announced it, give them 15, 20 minutes and say, I really want to understand your perspective, and listen and use listening skills you can read about anywhere. And then after I'd done that, they didn't mind if I found against them. This guy's exactly right. It was more important to feel included than how the decision went. And of course, being heard is a very, very deep human need, so practice hearing people. This is one of the storylines I love. Take responsibility to communicate until you're understood. How about that? Now, in many organizations, meetings are onerous, so I'll give you a few thoughts about it. One is that I would always demand that a meeting be designated as information or decision before I would agree to go. Information meetings meant someone's there to tell me something, and if I've got something important to do, I can always find out later what the information was. In decision meetings, I would make sure we had all the right players, all the right people to make important decisions. I'd insist every meeting had an agenda. It didn't have to be a lot, but a brief agenda. In fact, we have a weekly telecon with my team, and I put out an agenda 24 hours ahead of time with all the things I want to talk about so people can look and decide to come or not. And then whatever decisions you take or actions or minutes, brief things, put it out, and people will begin to not show up to meetings when they don't need to be there. And what a time saver that would be. Under-inclusion glitches, inadequate delegation, people feel like their hands are tied, inadequate information. This is particularly important in staff offices. In staff offices, information is the currency of power. Then I've seen this done badly so many times. The Group Achievement Award is done sloppily and ends up making people feel worse than when they started, and here's how it happens. Someone works on the project for 10 years and leaves, and then you have the Group Achievement Award, and you leave the person out and you include someone who's only been there for the last 3 months. This is really, really anger-provoking in people. Too many boring meetings, too many invitees, burdened by email. So what I discovered was when I was emailing people that didn't have to respond to me, like NASA managers when I'm not in NASA anymore, the longer the email, the less likely I would hear anything or the longer it would take. So I began practicing putting all my messages in the subject line. And today, in the 4D team, we almost all just use subject lines. So can you do a Roles Accountability Authority event at Northrop in December 14th? Yes. Okay, thanks. See, if you're using a thing like Outlook, which most people use, you cannot fail to read the subject line. It's just right in front of you. And then another thing that I really dislike is when someone puts out a big, long CC list, and I keep getting emails from the other participants about what they think about something. I don't want that in my inbox. So instead, what you do is you put all the CCs in the BCC line. Then reply all doesn't work. And don't reply all yourself. So here's our standard thing. Go to your workbook. Here's some inquiry. When you complete this, go do the next thing before you have your conversation. This is pretty much what we've talked about already. Takeaways from this section. It's kind of a fun cartoon. And next we go into agreements. Module 25. Thank you for listening and see you soon. Bye-bye.